one night he's dropping me off and I was like, hey, I wanted to talk to you about something. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, so I've just been getting like the feeling like you like me. And I just want to let you know, like, I don't like you.
Yeah.
I remember he just like looked at me and he's like, I actually like am not interested in you like that.
That's so good.
And he's like, I like that. Yeah, that's not an issue. And I was like, oh, okay.
Hello and welcome to the Christians Who Date podcast.
Who are you?
I'm Andrea Alley, and I'm sitting here. Oh, sorry. No, Lauren, please go ahead.
Well, I'm Lauren Forney.
And I'm Kalli Christofferson.
I really tried to intro it the same way I intro by myself because I just got the feedback from one of our like favorite people / really good friends that I have like this like mystery novel like
sultry voice,
Miss Scarlet in the Game of Clue voice.
In all my days of knowing
like,
you,
what?
I've
In the
never
library?
thought of that. I've never thought of you with a sultry voice in the 13 years I've known you.
Well, that's because we never recorded a podcast until now.
I love that voice and a microphone.
I
so
was
different.
telling her it's because when I'm with you guys, like I feel like we're on a Zoom call or something, and I'm just not self-conscious about like my roommates hearing me. But when I'm by myself, I get self-conscious about it, so I like talk lower.
In hushed tones.
And she was like, honestly, if your copywriting career doesn't work out, you should look into this
Audible.
like, Audible mystery novel
I would
reader.
buy that romantic mystery novel.
Yeah, sign me up.
Let's do it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, Dre, what are we
So
talking
funny.
about today?
Well, this is actually, speaking of people listening to the podcast and giving us feedback, this is actually a topic. This is our first topic that is a response to something somebody requested because they were listening to the podcast and they were like, you guys talk a lot about like, if you can't have hard conversations, then you can't date is basically what we've said. Like we've kind of joked, but like we're kind of serious. And so today that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about why we say that and what kind of hard conversations come along with dating. And honestly, like part of the dating culture we're seeing today is, I think, a result of people just not knowing how to have conversations, like not having the tools, or maybe haven't been taught or guided through it at all, or maybe they just don't. I think most of the time people just don't want to hurt people's feelings.
Yeah.
And so they do something that feels less hurtful, but then in the long run, it actually ends up being more hurtful. So that's our goal today. We just want to give you some tools, some ideas for how to talk through things that maybe are a little uncomfortable to talk through. So we're going to start where we like divided today up into levels. So
That's how good we are at hard conversations. We're like, well, level one or level 3, like
Right. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
We're pros.
But we're gonna and the reason we're pros is because we all used to suck at this.
Yep. Say it again.
Horrible times.
Which honestly, I feel like is the reason we can have this whole podcast is because it's been such a journey for all of us. You don't get this much material from being good right out of the gate.
No.
You don't.
Thousands of fails, and I'm like cringing thinking about some of them as we think about today. I'm like, oh gosh.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So many memories. Wow.
So many memories.
Bad memories.
So we're gonna start there, and then we're gonna go into like maybe some level 1, then level 2, possibly level 3 hard conversations. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. So I feel like one of you two should definitely start it off. I think your stories that you've been sharing on the group thread have just surpassed any of mine. So
That's good.
Yes.
Kalli, you want to go first?
yeah.
I would love to go first. So, level 1, we're talking about how we've grown in having hard conversations. I can think of one of the first ever hard conversations I had for me, which now I would be like, oh, that wasn't even hard. But, when you're 19, it was hard. So, at the time, I was in school. This guy I knew was giving me rides all the time because I didn't have a car. And I started to suspect that he was crushing on me. And he asked me to coffee once. And I said yes, purely because I was like, well, he gives me rides and I don't give him gas money. So,
Man.
So I'll let him buy me coffee on top of that.
I guess I'll let him buy me coffee to make him feel better.
Exactly. And so we go to coffee and it was just like, I don't know if it was a date or a hangout. I don't know, but I was terrified and I went and I was like, I don't want this to be a date. Please, please, please. So
Did you wear a
anyways,
hoodie?
I didn't. I should have. Would have been. I don't know if I had a hoodie at that time, but I wouldn't have put it past me. So we go on this coffee date, whatever. And then later, I was like, I think I'm just going to have to tell him that I don't like him because he likes me clearly. And so one night.
Love the confidence. Once again, we're coming in with a lot of confidence.
Too much.
Too much confidence. 18 years old or 19, whatever. I was like, yeah, there was a lot. So yeah, one night he's dropping me off, once again, because I didn't have a car. So he's dropping me off. And I was like, hey, I wanted to talk to you about something. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, so I've just been getting the feeling like you like me. And I just want to let you know, I don't like you.
So bad.
And so I just wanted to let you know how I feel. And I was terrified. I've never told a guy this before, so I was terrified. And I was like, I don't even want to give
You've
him.
never told a guy that you don't like him.
Not at that point, no. And so I was like, I don't want to leave any room for him to be like, oh, I like you. So I'm just gonna say everything at once.
Yeah.
And I remember he just looked at me and he's like, I actually am not interested in you like that.
That's so good.
And he's like, that, yeah, that's not an issue. And I was like, oh, okay.
This is so good.
But seriously, I would maybe do that if I did like someone and they rejected me that hard. I'd be like, yeah, definitely not interested in you either.
Yeah. So I'm like, I don't fully know how the man felt, but I was just like, oh, okay. And then he leave. And I was like, well, that's what that was.
Did
and
you
then
ever
I
get rides again? Did you ever get rides again?
Yeah, did you have to find a new ride?
No, sweet man, he kept giving me rides.
Oh my gosh, darling.
Wow.
I know.
He couldn't back away. I mean, he told you it wasn't a problem,
Yeah,
so he can't back out on that now.
No,
Yeah.
he had to stick to his guns and be like, no, I don't like you. I'm going to show you. I'm going to still give you rides.
I can give you rides, no problem.
Yeah.
Not even interested.
So that's where I started. That yeah. And man, I've grown so much, praise God. Do we want to say do we want to start off with how we've where we started and then where we've gone? What are your guys' thoughts?
Or do you want to start with just the bad stories now?
Yeah. What do you guys prefer?
Maybe let's go around and say the bad story.
Okay.
We'll start with everyone's
All
bad
right, Lauren.
stories. Okay.
I'm tossing you the ball. It's your turn.
Okay, I'm kind of similar with Kalli. I literally think I had a cycle. I can think of 7 conversations with men.
Incredible.
From 18 to 24, where I would be dating a guy and then I just would find a point where I'm like, I know we can't date, or for whatever reason. It could be weird reasons. One guy didn't like that I dyed my hair purple, in college. Only a part of it. He's like, yeah, I don't like that. And I was like, yeah, we're over. Type of thing.
We can't work through that.
We can't work through it. But I just remember what it would happen is I would get to a point where we're dating or going on dates, and I for some reason in my head, we wouldn't have any hard conversations really. I would just get to a point where I'm like, well, I'm not going to date him, or I don't like him, or we can't work. And then I would just go to extreme. So I'd kind of go 0 to 100 of we're dating, we're just getting to know each other. And I'd be like, yeah, this can't happen anymore for XYZ. And it'd give no room for any type of like negotiation. And I remember this one guy specifically, we had been talking for like a year or so, and he had like come and like visited me from Ohio to Indiana. It was like super sweet. We really liked each other. And I kind of just like, the date didn't go that well. And so I was like, yeah, he never even told me he like really likes me. And I know he does. And so I had to call him up and I was like, yeah, we can't date anymore because you never told me you liked me. And he was like, wait, like what? And I was like, yeah, like this can't happen. And I was like, I just cut him off. Like hardcore would cut people off and like give no room for anything. And so like I broke the guy's heart and I would just be harsh. And I remember that happened like in college with a guy, and even after college, it would just be kind of like we're building, and then I just make a decision in my head because of whatever reason. I remember one guy, I was like, he's not called to missions, and I am. And I just know that he is never going to be internationally living, because at the time I wanted to live internationally and, you know, save the orphans. So I was like, you're not called to be a missionary like me, so we can't date. And he's like, what? Like, you don't know that? Like, and I was like,
you never asked me.
Yeah, in my mind, I was like, it doesn't matter. I know. So just these like poor guys, just like no chance, like 0 to 100, was not willing to have like any real like asking them their heart conversation. And so
yeah,
it was just, and then I'd want to be friends with them, and they're like, heck no, you just like stabbed me in the heart. Like all these guys, it was like the hardest rejection, because I think I was like you, Kalli. I was like, I got to be clear, like,
yep,
yeah, we can't do this. And then I would, like, when it came to even just hard conversations and dating, it was like avoid, and then throw everything at them, like everything I was thinking, like what was it, a dog pile, like it just whatever. I'm just gonna, every single thing I'm gonna list out, and they're gonna have to talk about it. And so that's also really intense to do that as well. So it's embarrassing, and I feel so bad for every dude, and they're all, I think, doing okay overall, but I feel bad that I was so harsh.
As I survey in my head how everyone's doing.
I like, you're all okay.
Fine. You're like, yeah, they all checked out of rehab. They're doing good.
Yeah, they're all okay. So yeah, so that was the thing. What about you, Dre?
Oh man. Well, I just wanted to comment first and say that is the Lauren that I met originally, was the Lauren who was like ready to save the orphans and go to the nations, as we called it, because
no one get in the way.
We had just come from YWAM, and YWAM doesn't say, you know, they don't say like we're going to live overseas or we're going to be missionaries. They say we're going to go to the nations.
That's right.
Lauren, like, yeah, just randomly when we were living together, I feel like if she had anything like come up with work or like anything hard, she'd be like, it's because I'm not in the nations. Like, and then she'd just be like, crying about like, I just want to be in the nations. Like,
yes.
So such a rich
crazy
time.
So wild town. Now I'm just chilled out normal human.
You're like, that's why all this is happening.
Yeah, exactly. She's like, if I was in the nations, man,
yep,
there'd be no problems.
There might have been avoidance.
I also was questioning myself, because I was like, man, I wish I cared about the nations as much. Like,
oh man,
yeah. I'm like, I'm so glad I'm in America right now. But
proud to be an American.
Proud to be an American. Yeah, but anyway, I don't know if I have any. Your stories were so rich. The only one I could think of is I had a friend that we like hung out all the time. We got like, we were really good friends we were pretty good friends in high school, and then really good friends in college. And it was kind of funny, like if a guy, you know, brought up dating, I would act like it was the most like outlandish thing that he could ever bring up. Like, even though we're like hanging out a ton, or like we're talking, or like, we're like, we've had some good conversations. Like, I'm like, what? Like, you think there's like chemistry, like you want to date? Like, I'm just like, so like, what?
Flabbergasted.
And I'm like, Andrea, that is like how every romantic comedy starts. Like, how did you not figure out like we're vibing here? Like, maybe one of us is thinking about going on a date. Like, anyway. So
you're like, this came out of nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. I am blindsided right now. Like, sure, we've gone to 5 movies, just us. Like,
you've told me things you've never told anybody else. That's normal. Yeah.
You bought the ticket 3 out of 5 times. No, that's really extreme.
Popcorn and soda included.
Oh.
Yeah. Just one of the times.
Oh, okay.
No,
well,
amazing.
Mixed signals. Whoa. Yeah.
That is an exaggeration, but it's also like based on truth. So oh man,
so good.
But anyway, so one of those guys, I feel like he just brought it up, like, why I think I had like made some offhanded comment about like, you and I dating, LOL, like that would never
ridiculous
happen. And he was like, he's like, wait, why not? And
oh, sweet guy.
All I said was like, because I just know what I want. And
dang.
Poor guy. Oh man, these men.
Poor guy.
We're so sorry.
Totally, we're apologizing.
We're pretty savage at times.
Yeah, it's horrible.
But also, like, I mean, A, savage. B, I did not know.
Yeah.
It's like 20.
Exactly.
I was like 19 or 20. Like, I 100% did not know what I wanted. But in my head, I had a picture, of like what it was going to be like. And so I was like, you don't fit my picture, which I feel like you should be able to just read my mind and figure out, So anyway, he's doing great now. But
I feel like that's how we feel better. We're like, I think they're okay.
They're okay now.
Yeah. Like,
it's been 10 years. I think he's all right.
Finally
Finally
married. Yeah, he's fine. Well, but savage. Why were we so savage? I don't know.
Yes. I'd be curious if you all, have any of you had someone be savage to you? Like they didn't do well with a hard conversation to you.
Oh,
that's a great question.
Nobody has matched the level that I've been. Mean.
I haven't had someone be like mean towards me. Like I think the only time like that someone was like, I'm not interested in, like we were already friends and I was like telling him like I had feelings for him and he was like, honestly, like there's been moments where I've had feelings for you, but I don't think that's something like I want to pursue. So he was super kind to me. I've never had someone be like as intense as I was.
Yeah.
So, awesome. But what about you guys?
I mean, I think I've had like some savagery and like dating.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's definitely been one person I remember I met them on Hinge and we were talking for a while and there was some drama where he's like, I don't want to date you right now. I'm going to date this other person. And then we tried to reconnect, like went on a hike and I was like, actually, I like, can we be friends? But I like am interested. And they were like, well, if you want to be friends, then like we can't talk anymore. And it just was like drama. So I think it was miscommunication that then created that I was like, can we talk this through? And the person was like, no, I don't want to talk it through. And so I was like, oh, like there was something maybe triggered on it. There was no further like conversation to be had, which I'm like, I think we could clarify things if we just had some good like back and forth dialogue. And it was kind of like, and wall, scene done. So I think I've had that towards me of like, you can feel they shut the door, but we weren't like super far in to like anything. We'd hung out once and we're like, maybe. And then it was like, no longer. So maybe that was one that I was like, oh, I'm usually, and we're older. Like this was in the past couple of years. So I was like, oh, usually you can have a conversation and kind of like figure it out. But
totally.
Yeah. I've definitely been rejected, but I feel like it's been pretty good on their end each time.
I love it.
Yeah, I can't remember one where they did a bad job, so
yeah,
that's good. Yeah,
good job out there, men.
Good
we're
job
sorry.
out there.
It's
The
us
men
women.
have rejected me.
And I'm curious too, like, I know my reason, but why do you think you guys wanted to come out of the gate so like intensely about like, no, I don't like you?
I think for me, it was that picture in my head. Like, definitely, at least in my early 20s / college, it was like I just was, certain I was going to find a guy who like checked off all these things. And so, yeah, if a guy, I wasn't like openly like, who are the guys that are actually in my life and like are good friends and have a lot of the same values and we have a good sense of humor? Like, what are the actual options available to me? Instead, I had this like pretend option in my head that I was, determined to find. And so I think that's why, I was like, yeah, you might be a good guy and we might get along and like literally check off all these things, but you're not the picture in my head. So which is kind of a bummer, but
yeah,
good question. I think for me, I first of all had no probably from my family system, I learned not to have any hard conversations. Like I was more the silent one when hard things happen in our family. I would just like avoid every hard conversation. So I was I call it stunted when it came to anything hard. I wouldn't have hard conversations with friends, like nobody. I was just silent when it came to those things. So that's something I had to really grow in during my 20s. And so it greatly affected my dating. But I also, I was going to say with it, I think I thought I was doing them a service by like, if I know I can't date you because you don't fit the image in my head, then I'm just going to like cut this off now and control the situation instead of giving it room to maybe let there be a gray area in growth or all of that. It's like, I really wanted to control it. And I think there was a thing in me that thought, and that's probably with my family system, like if I reject you, if you really, really like me, you'll still keep coming back and like figure it out with me. So I think I had this thing of like, oh, it's okay if I reject you because if it's like a weird like belief that like, oh, you'll just keep trying. When really I made it so clear, like we're done. And so that was like a weird thing in me too. So I think there's, these like different belief systems, probably from my family system that affected these romantic relationships.
It's so interesting.
What about you, Cal?
Yeah, for me, I think I very similar to Lauren. I just wanted to be able to control the situation, and I didn't want to leave room for like a gray area. And I just wanted to be like, oh, it's a yes or a no. And like the idea of like leaving it open and like seeing what happened in a lot of like situations was just like terrifying to me. So I'm like, no, I just want to like be done and go to the next thing. I don't want to try to work through this and like necessarily be vulnerable. Like I want to go to the next thing. But yeah, a lot of fear and a lot of control were kind of, I think, my motivators in those situations, at least in the early ones. And then when I actually started to like talk through things, it was a big game changer. And just being like, oh, okay. And I used to really approach these conversations with like, I know exactly where it's going to go. And then it eventually changes where you're like, well, I know what I have to say, but I don't know how they're going to respond. So you have no idea how the conversation's going to go. So that's like a whole other thing that we can get into. But yeah.
So good.
Yeah. So how have you grown, Kalli, since your early days of
since the early days.
Of being like, I guess I have to give you coffee, but also I don't like you.
But also don't get any ideas. Man, so much I've grown. Praise God. I think now, when I know with a guy, like, okay, because there's, I don't know, trying to figure out how I want to say it, but there's like a whole discovery process. Like you're starting to get to know a guy, feel out like, okay, is there something there? Do I want to keep getting to know each other? You keep getting to know each other. And for me, kind of like a pattern that's happened is like I'll start getting to know a guy, and then at some point it's like, okay, what's going on here? Like we haven't been super clear. Like we clearly like spending time together, but you haven't been very like forward with where you're at with me. So I know for me, I'm like, okay, I have reached a point where I need clarity and I need to have a conversation. So I will kind of make a list of things like I want to talk about, and I make it really practical. I like write down all the things that like I'm like, okay, these are like questions I have or concerns or whatever. And then honestly, like I'll practice what I want to say to this person. Like I never go in now, at least, I never go into having a hard conversation like winging it. I always am like, okay, what are the things that I want to say? And how do I want to say them? And sometimes like I'll practice and I'll be like, okay, like I don't actually want to say that part. Like it helps me so much, because when you do have hard conversations, it's like it can feel so intense. You can feel sick. You can feel scared, and you're just like not sure what's going to come out. And so having already kind of prepped myself what I want to say has been a game changer. And I feel like I'm able to be so much more present and like hear what the other person's saying and not just be like, well, have I said everything like I needed to say? Like I just feel like I'm able to allow a conversation. And yeah, let it just be a two-way street and not just be like, well, here's everything I want to say and now I'm done and we can go on or whatever. Like allowing there to be space for both of those things. So that's how I've grown, is just really being practical. And also asking them like, hey, like really, like where are you at? Like what are your thoughts on this? Like I mean, it depends on what the conversation is, but it's like, do you have feedback for me? Like just being open to that. Like it's not me just coming in guns blazing and being like, this is everything I feel. Bam. It's like, no, like also, how do you feel? Where are you at with things? So, yeah. But what about,
for sure.
Yeah. What about you guys? Have you grown?
Lauren?
You want me to go? Okay.
Yeah.
Gosh, I feel like I've grown so much in my 20s. I mean, you go from practice, but then I think the more you can become comfortable in your own skin and grow in knowing your own self and your identity. I mean, like I do talk about family systems, but the more I learn, like letting God heal me from the pain and brokenness of my own family and my journey with that, like I feel like I just became more solidified in who I was, and then that has changed my relationships, both with my friendships and in romantic relationships. And so I've seen that change of like just learning how to have healthy conversations. And so when it came to like romantic relationships, I think what I learned is how to be really gentle in my approach, like not combative or come in, I have to fight for something. It's actually like, oh, I'm here to have a conversation because I want to connect with you. And I'm going to be vulnerable about some things, but it's because I actually want connection, even if I can't control the outcome of how you'll respond or if we'd break up because of this, or maybe it'll make us closer. Like my goal was always, how do I become closer? And I knew when I'd have to have a conversation that was harder was when I started to put up walls or pull away from that person I was dating. That's when I knew, okay, I'm starting to pull away, or I'm starting to get anxious or afraid. And so I realized if I don't address this or share that this is bothering me or this is something going on, then it's actually going to keep dividing us and make us more and more separated. And I realized, I don't want that separation. And so I need to share this and let my guard down so that I can continue to connect or give that opportunity for a connection. I had one of my good guy friends in college. I remember I was visiting his family and I like adored his parents. They were just an incredible Christian couple, loved God. And they one day were having an argument. And they're like my favorite. I don't know. They were just like the perfect example to me of like an amazing marriage. And they had an argument and I started weeping like in the other room, hearing them argue. And it was so sweet because I was so like, oh my gosh, they're arguing. Like it really scared me.
Aw.
And they came in and talked to me and they're like, Lauren, we love each other. And when we argue, we actually are here as a team, like trying to figure out whatever the issue or problem is together as a team. Like
Wow.
we do have hard conversations. We do sometimes, but we're doing it to as a team connect and try to solve the problem. We're not trying to fight against each other or like belittle each other. And I never had heard someone say that. And it was also so sweet that they came in and like comforted me while they were having like an argument.
Sweet.
Because I'm like,
they were like parenting you through
they were
that.
parenting me as they were like having some things they had to deal with. But to see that modeled to me helped me so much of just like, oh yeah, when it comes to like these things, I don't have to like try to like combat that person or just defend myself. I'm actually here as like the hope is like a team in that conversation. And so that really helped me like that modeled. And so I think just it grew of not that it isn't high stakes. It's actually really important. And like Kalli, like I will sometimes take notes or I'll premeditate or I'll think about, okay, when do I want to bring up this topic in our date or our next meeting or when would be best? Like sometimes I've waited a couple dates before I bring something up because I'm like, I just want to have fun. And it just feels like this isn't yet the right timing. So I'm a big timing person. And sometimes though, you're like, no, we just got to talk about it now. It's not the best timing, and just hope the best. But because it's going to keep separating you from that person. And so those are some ways. I mean, I have other stories, but those are some things that like come to mind when it comes to how I've grown in having hard conversations. But what about you, Dre?
Yeah, that's good. I love how I feel like something you both mentioned is like it's now a two-sided conversation.
Yes.
Instead of me just like throwing all this stuff at somebody, which is great because the goal is to like respect the person across from you and actually like work towards connection. So I love that. How I've grown, honestly, I feel like I've talked about being codependent before, but I think a lot of my avoidance of hard conversations was rooted in codependency because it's hard for me to separate my feelings from the person I'm having a conversation with. And so if they feel rejected or they feel sad, like I can't handle that I'm the one making them feel that way. And I felt like it meant I was, doing something bad, even though maybe logically I would realize like, no, this is just what I need to do. But at least with rejection specifically. But a lot of it was rooted in me like not being able to maintain my own sense of self and just kind of have this rule in my head like you can't ever do anything that's going to hurt someone's feelings or that's bad, but it's like no, actually you're probably going to hurt people's feelings.
Like, definitely.
That's part of being in relationship and being human. And sometimes it will be unintentional, like hopefully it's never intentional, but it's just, we're all out here like bumping up against each other and we've all got our triggers and we've all got stuff happening. And sometimes it's like, okay, I maybe hurt you in the short run, but in the long run, there would have been a lot more hurt. So, I'm actually trying to like have some 10-year vision here. But anyway, so codependency I think was a big thing for me. that just made it hard. And so I guess the way that I've grown is being able to just talk myself through it more and be like, hey, this doesn't mean I'm hurting someone's feelings. Like, not, sorry, it might mean I'm hurting someone's feelings. That doesn't mean that I'm like a conniving, like evil person, you know, like that just means that we're human, and that, especially with dating, it's just that kind of relationship. It's hard. There's hurt feelings that happen there. So, and then just being able to be like, okay, I can be okay even if they're not okay.
Yeah.
Like I can be at peace even if, you know, maybe they don't feel at peace right now. Like just being able to be like, I'm a separate person and I don't have to feel the way that they're feeling, and I can have empathy for them and compassion, but that doesn't mean that I like totally lose myself. And you know, I would literally like, I can't even tell you how many times I've like broken up or rejected someone and been like the one who's crying way more.
It's true.
I think too, well, and two, I would kind of project a little bit. Like I'd be like, oh, like it was like I would not be able to handle if someone rejected me, and so I'd like project that onto them. But it's like, no, he's, you know, these are like grown men. Like, maybe it's hard, but like they can handle it. Like they'll be okay. And honestly, I'll be okay too. That's like some trigger childhood stuff going on in me that I feel like if I get rejected, I won't be okay. You know, like so.
Yeah.
There's some layers there, but
wow, that's so good. Something you touched on, Andrea, that I just wanted to like comment on is just like something that was a really big game changer for me is like learning how to be clear but also kind. And
so
pairing those together, like absolutely life-changing. But I think there's a way to do it where like if you're having a conversation with a guy, and wait, sorry, just a second. I have to remember what I was saying.
Also, sorry, just quick side note.
Yes.
I had an Olipop before this and I feel like there's so much air in my throat now. But anyway, sorry, Kalli.
I love this.
You're so good. Yeah, I think a good story I have of this, one time, this was a couple years ago, but I knew this guy. He was like a friend actually of Andrea, me, and a couple other people. And he'd like kind of hang around with us and stuff. And I didn't really think much of him outside of like our friend group. He wasn't like a close friend, just kind of a random friend. But I remember one night I was like working and I got off work and he like had come over to my work and like knocked on my door of my car. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what's up? And he was like so sweet and like really nervous. But he like just started talking to me and was basically like, hey, like, just want to let you know, like, I've actually been interested in you for like a while. Here's like the things I think about, like, why you're so great, and just wanted to like know if you'd be interested in going on a date with me. And honestly, I was like so shocked in the moment. But like literally, I feel like the grace of God came on me because I was able to like think really clearly in that moment and be really present with him and not freak out and be like, what's going on? So from that point, we just started like talking, and I did know where like how I felt about him, and I wasn't interested in him, but we just started talking through it, and I was just able to be like, hey, like, honestly, first of all, thank you so much for taking like such a huge risk with me. And I'm like, this is like a really grand gesture, like that you like would show up and just like come out of the blue to tell me this. And I'm like, I'm so grateful. And I'm like, I think you're an amazing guy. And I just started like listing like things that I admired about him. And I wasn't doing it because I'm like, oh, like what BS can I say to this guy? Like I was actually like, no, I really value him. So I just started telling him things I admired about him. And then I was like, but to be honest, like I don't feel that way about you. And I'm like, I want to be clear, and I would just want to be upfront. So like that's where I'm at. And so it probably went on for like a good like 20 or 30 minutes, us just kind of hashing things out. And he did tell me, he's like, honestly, like, he's like, just thank you so much. He's like, you're a really good rejector.
That's
Let's
awesome.
go. Testimony, Kalli.
Wow.
I was like, you don't know how much of a testimony that is, sir, because I used to be really bad. But he's like, I don't even really feel like I was rejected. He's like, I more so feel like you're amazing, but not for me. And he's like, if anything, I feel excited now about like the next girl that I get to pursue, because he's like, I feel like you just set me up for success. And I feel like in taking this step with you, like I've taken a step forward in my dating life in general. Because he
Come
also
on.
had
That's
just had,
awesome.
he had like a pretty intense breakup like a couple years before that he was still healing from. So he's like, I feel like this is a huge step forward for me in general.
Yeah, that's good.
So that was huge. And I remember both of us walking away from that being really thankful for that exchange. And I felt so honored too, because no one had come to me like that and been like, hey, I really like you. And so it was such a beneficial thing for us. And like I said, but being clear, but being kind. And yeah, it was such a good experience. So yeah.
I love that. That's so good. Yeah. Dre, I like keep thinking of you too, clear and kind. I don't know if there's anything you want to share with that, because I feel like you've really grown in that way too in hard conversations in like your dating life.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I was just thinking of the logistics of this podcast though.
Because we're at 40 minutes.
Because we're at 40 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. How do we want to transition, Dre?
I think, yeah, maybe I'll just say like, okay, I think we're going to get into some practicals. We've talked a little bit about like our stories.
Yeah, let's go into
Are we
practicals.
going to talk about ghosting?
Yes. Yeah.
Because I'm like, because I also talked about some of my practicals, which I can touch on again if we need to. But
yeah, I'm looking at level 2. I'm looking at level 2.
Great. Let's go to level 2. Let's do some practicals.
This says, heads up, Lauren's recording will continue on a new track. Started a new recording for Lauren due to a change in their devices. What?
Are we okay?
It does slightly sound different now.
It's your microphone. Did your mic get unplugged?
Is it okay now?
It still sounds like
it's
your
Mac computer mic.
Okay. What do I need to do?
Is your mic turned on and plugged in?
Yeah, everything's on.
Okay, so then go down below the screens and then hit that microphone button.
Okay.
And then hit ATR.
Okay, now we can't hear you at all. Now we
can't hear you.
So it's saying I can't switch mics.
Oh, it's probably because we're in the middle of recording.
Do we need
Which is weird.
Yeah, somehow it must have gotten unplugged because this is between my legs, and then it went to external.
Okay, so we'll probably just have to stop recording and then pick up again.
And then you just reattach.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so we're going to switch over now that you've kind of heard some of our story, our journeys with the whole hard conversation process. We're going to switch over to give you some practicals, because anyone I feel like who's especially been on the apps or in like the online dating space has probably noticed that it's like super common to ghost people. I think in that space specifically, just because you probably don't have any mutual friends. And so there's no real like,
consequence.
Like there's no consequence. You can just like peace out and you're not going to see them at work later, So, it's like ghosting has been a whole thing. And honestly, I think most of the time it's just people avoiding like an uncomfortable conversation. I don't even know if you could call it a hard conversation, but like an uncomfortable conversation.
Yep.
And they're maybe trying to like not hurt somebody's feelings. But I will say, I mean, and it is, I will say this too. I'll preface with this. I think the like definition of ghosting gets a little tricky on those apps because sometimes the conversation literally just dies
Yeah,
out.
absolutely.
And when that happens, I'm not like going in there like, hey, I'd just like to pick this up again and tell you that I'm not interested. Like,
Just rub some salt in the wound.
I think that's like a difference. Is it's mutual, where ghosting is literally like
Yes.
you're building and there's an immediate cut.
Yes.
Like off.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I mean, I honestly give a ton of grace. Like I wouldn't even for sure call it ghosting until we've met up in person. But that's me.
Ooh,
Like,
no, I think that's a good.
Okay.
Yeah, people could have different definitions, but I think that's fair.
Yeah, like yeah, I'm just saying like if you meet me on an app and we never meet up in person, like I don't count it as ghosting. Like if we've met up in person, then I'm like then it's like okay, you probably need to communicate with me like where you're at. So, anyway, and I don't know, even with that I'm like, well, if we both just aren't interested and don't talk to each other like But yeah, I think the most courteous thing to do in that situation is if you've met up with someone in person, like let them know, what you're thinking of going forward. So, and definitely if somebody is like still acting really interested in you and like asking a bunch of questions and like trying to reach you, like just do them the favor of telling them where you're at. Like it's, even if it hurts their feelings, like it's so much better than them having to like figure out what you're thinking, and people don't always know because guys have such different, I can't even tell you, like there's such a range of how their like texting is. So a guy might not text me for like 4 days and then pop up still interested, so it's like it's not clear just because you disappear for 4 days. Like she's probably still trying to figure it out if she's interested. So just the kind thing to do is to just be like, hey, you know what, I had a great time getting to know you, I loved like our conversation or whatever, like Kalli was saying, whatever you can genuinely say to encourage them, I think is helpful. And then just say, at this point, I'm not really interested in taking things further, but it was, thank you for your time, or however you want to say it. Do you guys have any practicals for like how to even phrase some of those conversations if you're not interested?
Yeah. I mean, I think more mine had been, either not interested or there was someone I actually decided I wanted to talk with. And then the others, I like kind of was like, hey, I'm actually starting to get to know this person, only them. And so I've actually, there was like, I remember I was on the apps, I think it was last summer, and there's one guy specific, I was talking to a couple guys, and there was one guy specifically, I was like, no, I really just want to get to know him. These other guys don't really stand out to me. And I just felt like I just want to talk to this one guy. It's like The Bachelor. And so I just said nicely, I was like, hey, I just wanted you to be super clear. I'm actually starting to like talk and get to know one guy specifically. And I just thought you should know that like I'm no longer like interested in furthering this. And I wanted you to know before like like I don't want to waste your time in a sense. And so I didn't say I don't want to waste your time, but I also like to give affirmations of like why I even was talking this long with that person. So I usually will point out a couple of things of like, hey, I think you're a really amazing guy. You're a hard worker, or like you have a really great sense of humor, and I've appreciated our time. Like if you really feel like there's been enough time for you to compliment them, don't make up compliments. But sometimes you're talking to them for a couple days or a couple weeks at a time. And so that's their time too, that they've been investing in you. And so I like to give some affirmations and then be clear of like, I'm going to be only talking to this person, and thank you.
Yeah.
That's good.
I think that's great.
Yeah. I think just communication is key. Like you don't have to go overboard on it, but I just think it doesn't take much to just be like, hey, just so you know, blah, 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 blah. Like, I think our culture just kind of avoids hard conversations or just uncomfortable things to say. And so they just like peace out. But it really doesn't take much to be like, hey, actually, like, I'm not interested in furthering this anymore, then this is why. Yeah. So I would just say like communicate and treat this person like they're a person, because it's so easy to just be on an app and, like you said, just be like, oh, it's just another person that I don't know, and it just doesn't feel real, but it is. And so just trying to communicate and be clear and be kind. Like those are the three things I would say.
Yeah. Treat them like you have mutual friends, even if you don't.
No, that's
It's
good.
Yeah. Good word.
Yeah, I keep, well, unless they are AI. I'm like, you know, like sometimes I'm like, are they real? You know, when it comes to the apps. But I keep thinking, I'm like, you're a human. Like you are a human. Like I want to treat you like a human. Like I'd want to be treated. And
it's good.
And so, yeah, I think that having those hard conversations are really good. And this is like specifically with the apps, but like I've also been very clear. Like I remember one guy like was saying some really perverted things, and we had been getting to know each other, and I was just like, hey, I'm gonna confront like not only that was inappropriate in a very respectful way of like, hey, you should never be talking this, but also we will not be talking any further. And I think it is, like you said, being clear of like, here's my boundaries, and you need to respect my boundaries. And so that might be in a dating relationship, talking about your boundaries, or it might be on an app of, this is why you do not get more access to me, young man.
Young man.
Young man.
Please tell me you said young man on the app.
No, but I found that. I was like, sir,
you go from like date mode to like mom mode. You're like,
listen,
young man.
Sit down, son.
No, I think I did say, I was like, I have not been talked to this since I was in middle school. So basically like, you're a middle school boy. You know?
Oh man.
So anyways, but the apps. So there you go.
Yeah.
Some communication tips.
Yeah. And I think it all comes back to as well, like we're just trying to help each other's improve in their dating. So just because that's another thing, like some girls will ghost because a guy is like creeping on them or says something gross, so they're just like done. And the guy doesn't even know why, and the girl's like, well, they should know, but they maybe don't. And so
this guy had no idea.
Yeah, exactly. So just being like, or maybe he thought that was attractive, like he's like, oh, maybe she'll like this. So just, I love what you did, Lauren, with just being like, hey, actually, like that's not okay with me, and I don't appreciate that. So maybe that was a really eye-opening experience for him.
Well, and specifically with that one, Kalli, I had already actually told him, because he had said something sketchy like the week prior, and I go, hey, I'm not into perverted jokes or like sexual comments like that, just want you to know. And he's like, oh, I didn't mean it that way. So I'd already even had like a hey, here's my boundary, this is not like how I go about flirting at all. And then he really said an inappropriate comment, and he again was like, what, like I don't understand. But it's just a boundary was crossed. And so that's something that we realize, like, too, sometimes you have to have multiple times, like, this is my boundary. And whatever area, for me, it's, I don't like perverted and sexual jokes towards me personally. Yep. I don't know about you two, but
they're all right.
Yeah, it might be, it just depends on your boundary.
Gosh, no.
So, but I already confronted that, and then that boundary was crossed again. And I'm like, we haven't even met in person yet. Wow. So I don't even need to talk to your face.
Yeah.
Like,
and you had already given him another chance too.
Totally.
So, and we are very gracious. Sometimes people will keep giving chances when you should not be giving chances.
It's true.
So true.
Yeah. A couple other things on that. Sorry, unless you had more.
No, that's it. I want to hear.
Okay. I was just going to say, when you're on the receiving end, like, it is actually, I have so much respect for people that take rejection well, which we've maybe talked about that before, but just like take it well. I always think about my mom. Actually, one of the things that like really drew her to my dad was she broke up with him, and he took it so well. Like he was just, she's like, I think we just need to be friends. And he was like, okay, I could always use another friend. And then just walked away. I know. And then my mom was like, what did I just do?
She's like, that was so attractive.
Yeah, I always think about that. yeah, when someone rejects me, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take it like my dad did. And not that, you know, that means that they're going to come back around, but it's just like, that's the kind of person that I want to be. And
that's good. Confident.
yeah, just like self-assured. Like, yeah, like it's going to be fine. So, and then it was fine because I'm here. So
thank goodness.
Thank goodness for rejection.
Thank goodness. Yeah. Thank goodness he took rejection so well. Am I right?
Otherwise, might not be here.
Would not have this podcast. That's
true.
sure.
Yeah.
Nope.
Wow. Shout out to my dad. But
that was crazy connections there. It all ties together.
I did also want to say, if you like apply this knowledge and, you know, you like actually communicate with someone instead of ghosting and then they don't take it well, that does not mean that you did something wrong. Like, that is on them. You decided the person that you, which this is the advice for those apps. You decide the person that you want to be on there, because you're going to get disappointed probably for like how other people act on there.
Yes.
But you can decide, like, I'm going to choose to be courteous. I'm going to choose to show up in this way. I'm going to choose to, you know, to be fine if somebody doesn't want to be with me, because they're allowed to not want to. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's what we're all trying to figure out. So yeah, don't be like, oh my gosh, those Christians who date told me to do this and then it backfired. Like,
yeah,
that's definitely more on that person than it is on you. Like, if you clearly communicated and you were kind, like we talked about, then success in my book, for sure.
Yeah, that's good.
So,
and I think too, sorry, go ahead, Lauren.
Are you sure, Cal? Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I love like the ownership we're talking about in these hard conversations is who we're going to be when we're dating somebody. Is I'm going to be someone who's respectful. I'm going to be someone that's confident. I'm going to be someone that is a clear communicator. I'm going to be someone that I'm not dependent on how that other person treats me. And so it gives us that freedom to kind of stand up for ourselves.
Yeah.
And respect that person and then let them come fully as they are. Because I think people, when they're respected, like, I mean, you hope that the better side of them comes out.
Totally.
And not see the true side of them. So,
right. Yeah.
But Kalli, what were you going to say?
Oh, just very quick. But I think dating this way is so refreshing to people like on the other end that haven't experienced dating like this, where it's just like, you know, playing a bunch of games and trying to control the other person. But when you come into a situation and you're just like, I'm going to be me, I'm going to treat you like a human, I'm going to be respectful, I'm going to communicate. And then, you know, if it doesn't work out, we can have that conversation and like, I bless you for the next person and move on. Like, for the person that's never experienced that, it's such a healing and refreshing experience. So I think the more that we can just own who we are and communicate and treat people well, like it's a really big deal. And so not taking that lightly.
Yeah, for sure.
Dre, can we talk a little bit about hard conversations in dating that don't have to lead to breakups? It's just most relationships are going to have hard conversations. They're going to have hundreds of them, actually. And that's just part of being in a relationship. And so can you share, either of you, like some of that, like practical tips for having hard conversations while dating?
Yeah, for sure. I actually, this is really funny, but before my last relationship, I actually prayed because I realized that something that was holding me back was not wanting to have hard conversations. And so I prayed, like, God, help me get better at this. And then I started dating somebody that, just more because of our backgrounds and kind of like how our lives were set up in the circumstances, you know, we were in, we ended up having a lot of hard conversations. And to his credit, he did not back away from any of them. Like, he, you know, he honestly initiated them in the beginning, and then we had a lot throughout our whole dating process. And it was a lot of us trying to figure out, like, you know, where to bend and how far was too far to compromise not on our values, but more on like our vision and our goals and like where we wanted to be in life and stuff. And so I think some things that like I learned through that journey, one thing, honestly, I would say this is the biggest thing, is that just because I'm feeling a certain way does not mean that I need to text him right then and be like,
Ooh, so
we need to talk about
good.
this like at your lunch break.
That's honestly gold. That's gold.
Yeah.
Self-control is a fruit of the spirit.
Oh yeah.
Yes. And I
Eat it.
actually asked our friend Jess how she handles this because she's married, and she had great advice. Shout out to Jess Scalino. We love
We
you.
love you, Jess.
She's also the one that said Andrea had a sultry voice.
Oh my gosh, this is her podcast.
We dedicate this to you, Jess.
Yes, we love you.
But she told me that she would talk to her heart when something like that happened, and she'd be like, "Hey, I see that you're feeling like hurt, and I see that you're feeling really anxious about this and that you really want to talk about it. And I promise that we will like ask to have a conversation and you'll get to talk through this. But like, it's not going to be right now, but we will circle back to this and you're going to be okay." So she would kind of like self-regulate and get herself, like okay, so that she could have it later. Because at the rate we were going there for a minute, like it was like every time we talked was a hard conversation, and then we weren't having any like playfulness or like connecting. And so I really learned how to like not need to have it the instant I felt something.
That's really good.
Yeah. And just kind of space it out more.
I was going to say, when did you know to like have those hard conversations? Because I think people, if you're not going to have it right when you feel it, like how did you know, okay, this is like a good time to have a hard conversation?
Yeah. I think after I made connection like a priority, and I mean, I gauged it a little bit off of him, like I was like, is he exhausted? Because that is not the time to do this.
Yeah. No, that's good. These are good practicals.
Yeah. Is he exhausted? Am I exhausted? Like, are we already not in a good spot to do this? But if we like felt connected, I guess. And I mean, not that I did this perfectly every time, but I think, you're just looking at, are we in a good spot where we feel connected to each other, and we've had some maybe more like lighthearted moments or dates or whatever where we've just gotten to have fun. Then maybe it's time to bring something up. And I do think I think a lot of dating anxiety comes from you have something that you need to talk about and you're not wanting to talk about it. So that's just like on a, how do I even know that I need to have this kind of conversation? I would say if I felt anxious, because that usually meant there was something, underneath there that I just, wasn't bringing up. So some anxiety maybe, or I mean, that's the biggest one. I don't know. Is there anything you guys have noticed that have been like, okay, this might mean I need to have a hard conversation?
I think it's something Lauren touched on earlier, but if I feel myself starting to pull back or protect myself in certain ways, that's a really big indicator for me of like, oh, something's off here, because I normally don't feel that way around this person. And so once if that starts happening, I start like really honestly looking at the last interactions we've had or conversations, and I try to figure out like, okay, where was the moment I started putting those walls up?
Ooh, that's good, Cal.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for me, when there was like a clash in values, like that's when I knew, like we need to talk this through of like, where are they coming from? And, maybe some differences in theology or differences in the way that they live. And that could be like money, family, how they take care of their health. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, so it's valuable. And to have those conversations, like, how do you go through this type of situation, or what does that mean to you? Or, and even like Christian values, there can be such a wide variety, even if you're dating someone who's Christian, of like what they believe. And so like you have to like, I try to be curious of like just asking more questions. And then of course sharing my heart too, which can be really scary. But I think if I realize like, oh, this is just a conversation, it's not like we're trying to fight or anything. And
Yeah.
keeping it regulated, like you talk about, I think it just creates it. Yeah, like it keeps a little bit more low stakes. It's really how that other person responds. At times, I feel like I've seen some people shut down, some people get combative. And that's when I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do. Like sometimes I'm like been out of my element by that way the other person responds. So I think that's good what you said, Dre, about codependency of like, I can't regulate you. I can only regulate me. I can only be in control of me in this conversation. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Sorry, Kalli, did you have something pop up?
It came to me earlier. That's when I got off. It shut me off of like whatever. But that's the thing that I came to, and I exited it. Is she
Yeah, it
on,
says
Dre?
their browser is not allowing Riverside to save to disk. I have no idea what that means. Right.
Do you think it's recording her?
I don't know.
Can you talk into the thing, Kalli? Yeah, I mean it turns
It's
purple.
picking up it's picking up your sound and stuff.
I think she's okay. Because it says you and two others like being recorded on my side in the corner. So we can always redo if not.
I was just gonna say one more thing about what I learned with Randall, and then maybe we can wrap up unless you guys have a lot more. Okay. What was it? Oh, here's one other thing I learned during that relationship with all the hard conversations was that somebody's not always going to be right. Like, and you're both going to have very strong feelings that don't agree and perspectives that don't agree. And so the goal isn't necessarily like to debate, and like lay out all of your logical reasons. And if you like, I mean, I don't know what I was expecting, but you can't expect somebody to just be like, you know what, you just laid out a very logical argument there. Like, actually, I'm on your side now. Like, that's not how our conversations usually went, like it's, and so it's a lot of like, okay, how can I understand where he's coming from? And how can I really like put myself in his shoes and figure out like, okay, how would this feel coming towards me? Like, how would it feel if I was in his shoes? And really working to see like, okay, where is he coming from and where's like a middle ground that we can meet? And if there's not a middle ground that both people feel good about, like, that's fine, like then that's your answer right there. Like you're probably not, going to be able to get married. So anyway, but I definitely had to let go of the idea that like I was going to win him over to like what I thought about things, because that just was not real. Like you have two human beings with two different personalities and backgrounds and experiences, and our core values were the same, but like there's maybe some other outer values that were a little bit different. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Can I say something with that, Dre? I feel like you did a really good job, and that specific relationship is you both worked through a lot of hard conversations. And so that's something that's like I think a golden nugget in a relationship is like, can you work through hard conversations? And then got to a point where it's like, okay, well, these things we both aren't going to budge in different areas of our life. And so we do have to part ways. And so not all hard conversations will end in a breakup. Like, it's just like, we're trying to figure this out. We're trying to grow. We're trying to connect. And then eventually it was like, okay, well, this is where we separate. But like, I think you both did such a good job of like giving such space for you both to keep connecting and keep talking and keep understanding each other, which most relationships will just be like, one hard conversation, we're out, we're done. And it's
right.
and just give up. And it's like, where is resiliency in some of this,
Yeah, because no matter what, you're going to have them. So you really do need somebody that you like. I think Jordan Peterson has said, like, you need somebody you can spar with. Like, you need somebody that you guys duke it out well, like, and it stays respectful and you really work to understand each other. Like, that is something you need. You don't need someone that you never have you never have any fights, because it's like, or arguments or whatever you want to call it. But it's like, you're both showing up. If you're both showing up authentically and being true to how you really feel, it's not going to be the same. Like, and so the way you work through that is important, I think, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. And if it breaks the relationship, maybe it already was broken before. You know what I mean? If it's that fragile, like, then there's already brokenness. So
totally.
I know that sucks to hear, but it's just like, you got to have two people that can work it out together.
Yeah. I think that's why Kalli and I are so close now, is because we just hated each other so much.
You guys had to fight
at the beginning, we had so much we had to overcome.
I think Dre and I once had a hard conversation and we're like, this is our first fight. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah. Every time Laura and I disagree, she's like, is this our first fight?
It's the best. I'm like, we finally fought.
We finally fought.
So wild.
Just a game changer.
Yeah. Gotta have them. So good.
It's overrated. It's not that good, you guys.
Okay. We do not want to bring this onto the podcast.
Listeners of the podcast, throw it in the comments right now. Back me up if you know National Treasure is not that good.
So wild.
What? Okay.
Oh my
Next
gosh.
podcast, we're just talking about this. We're putting a pause on dating. We're just going to talk about this.
Okay. So you all, this is going to be hard to say, but I think we need to wrap up this podcast.
Wow, Lauren, you delivered that so well. Thank you.
Respectful, I would say.
Respect. Yeah. Wow. Thanks for joining us. If you're listening, we're so glad that you're here. If you have any follow-up questions on that, we'd love to hear. And I hope that helps you not ghost people in the future if you've been a ghoster up until now. And that gives you a little bit of courage the next time you have something hard to talk through come up. So, yeah. Any last thoughts, guys?
Oh,
nope. All right.
I'm like, bye.
Love you all. See you next time.
Love you.
We are out.